All right, welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. My name is Jessica McDonald and I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Corvallis. For over 100 years, the League has worked to advance our democracy. And your local league here in Corvallis works on issues that you care about, like housing and social justice and voting rights. Tonight's program is brought to you by our stellar Community Planning Committee. And if you're not involved already, I invite you to join us, whether as a league member, a volunteer, or an advocate. So just a note about Zoom protocol. I know we're all professionals at this now. You might have noticed this is a webinar format, so you can really sit back and relax. I do want to let you know two things. One is that this is being recorded and that sometime in the next week, once this is put up on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to find that and send it to friends or watch it yourself. And if you want to find the YouTube channel for the League of Women Voters of Corvallis, there's also a link on our website. And so tonight, for interaction and for Q&A, we're going to direct you, the attendees, to use the Q&A box, which is often located at the bottom of your screen. So you can type in questions at any point in time, and then those will be read at the end of tonight's presentation. I want to note that coming up in the next month, we have a variety of programs that are going to be available to League members and to the public. We have legislative updates starting, which is a monthly series during session. This is really our first one in February launching. We have a program coming up on barriers to housing. We have a program coming up in early March on the national popular vote. Tonight, we are honored to have Tom Hubbard here with us, the Utilities Division Manager here in Corvallis, here to talk about water systems in Corvallis. I'm going to hand it over to Laura Evanson, our moderator and fellow board member for tonight's presentation.
I'd like to welcome all of you tonight to our attendees and to Tom Hubbard from the City of Corvallis. This is the third annual Know Your City series that is sponsored by the League of Women Voters and is an annual series that we're trying to do as an educational service to our community. This is our second program in this year's series, and it's all about Corvallis water, about the operation and maintenance of both drinking water, wastewater, and the stormwater systems. So at this point, I'd like to remind you that you may use the Q&A for any questions that you'd like to ask our speaker at the end of his talk. So welcome, Tom. We'd like to thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Hubbard, Utilities Division Manager with the City of Corvallis. And I would like to say thank you for being so involved in your community and for inviting me to present to you today on such an important topic. Okay, I have to ask a question at this point. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Okay.
And Tom, if you're
technical difficulty.
If you're having any issues with advancing the slide to the next one.
Yes.
Okay, then either on your, rather than using the mouse, what might work is the up and down arrows on your keypad on your computer. There are also, if you put your mouse over the slide that is on the screen, there may be a right and the left arrow that's very light in the very bottom left-hand corner that would also advance.
Ah, That was it. Thank you. All right, we may have a little delay, so you have to excuse me. So I wanted to start off by saying that everything we do revolves around some very important principles. The Imagine Corvallis 2040 is our community vision in action and consists of the 6 focus areas on the screen. Each of the 6 areas are unique and is used as a guide for our community leaders, our community organizations, and individuals to make decisions and take action that reflect our community's shared values. If you're not familiar with the Imagine Corvallis 2040, I would encourage you to visit our city website and read through it. Now let's take a dive into our Public Works mission statement. So you can see on the screen, Public Works has a mission statement that incorporates the Imagine Corvallis 2040 vision. The mission statement describes who we are and what we do. It reflects our core purpose, values, and principle of Public Works. You can see there are several key words and terms that are in this mission statement that is incorporated as part of that Imagine Corvallis 24. Let's take a deeper dive into our vision. It has a vision statement, and this is a very powerful vision statement that was developed by staff, is incorporated into everything that we do. We live and hold each other accountable by this vision, because without this vision statement, we cannot be successful in our mission. This vision statement is clear, inspirational for now and into the future. And as a team, we developed the statement as a shared image of success that inspires, motivates, and guides our team members to work together. It focuses on the future and what we are buildable for decision-making, planning, and actions by providing direction. Let's take a look at our structure. So the utilities division structure is pretty basic organizational structure. We have 5 work groups that have specific responsibilities for operations and maintenance and regulatory compliance. The staff that work in all these are professionals and are dedicated to serving our community. The water and wastewater plants operate 7 days per week, and all staff will respond to emergencies 24/7. So we operate 2 water treatment plants, which is a Taylor treatment plant and Rock Creek. The plants produce in excess of 2.8 billion gallons of water each year. The Taylor water treatment plant was built in 1949 and is currently rated at a 21 million gallon per day production. The Rock Creek plant was built in 1955 and is currently producing 2.5 million gallons a day. By having these 2 water sources, it provides redundancy for emergencies and provides flexibility for treatment plant operations. Even though both plants utilize surface water, they are different in regards to the raw water. So both plants operate basically through the Safe Water Drinking Act, and the treatment capabilities at both locations match. We also operate 1 wastewater treatment plant. The plant was built in 1954 and is known as a CSO, combined sewer outfall, where it treats some stormwater and treats about 5 billion gallons per year of wastewater. So we have a very small part of the city that also is a combination area, which is wastewater and stormwater. So a small part of the city utilizes the wastewater treatment plant in that process. The stormwater system has 185 miles of pipe. There's 10,000 manholes and storm boxes. There are 65 detention ponds, and we maintain about 20 miles of creeks and streams within the city. The staff work very hard on making sure that we protect the environment and mitigate flooding that could occur within the community. The sewer collection system is very complex. It consists of over 225 miles of pipe, 5,000 manholes, and 7 pumps. Amazing job at maintaining this critical asset. Our pressure washing pipes, cleaning manholes, and closed circuit TV of the inside of these pipes for defects. I would like to point out that we're one of the first cities in the state and in a very large region that started doing COVID sampling within the wastewater system. We teamed up with OSU and provided some assistance and in getting the samples and actually providing some of the equipment to get the COVID sampling done within OSU, their network, and they've been amazing to work with. The water distribution staff also does a very amazing job of maintaining 255 miles of pipe that range anywhere from 2 to 30 inches in size. They also maintain 7,500 valves that are used for shutting off the system in emergencies. We maintain 7,500 fire hydrants. And at the same time, we maintain over 17,000 water meters. A lot of folks don't realize that some of these water meters, a very large percentage, about 90%, are what we call radio read, where the information that comes from the meter is sent over a network through antennas that are strategically placed throughout the city, and we collect the reading that way of the water. And it's very, very efficient for us. It takes vehicles off the road. It lessens the driving time that staff have to be on roads. And it saves fuel and wear and tear on equipment. And we see a big benefit in this process. And we keep reinvesting within this network for this type of efficiency. So switch over to the water distribution staff, or I'm sorry, in addition to the groups mentioned, we've got the technical services work group that operates and maintains 10 pump stations and 9 water reservoirs, 1 dam, 7 lift stations, and conducts all equipment maintenance within the utilities division. The technical services division is made up of, we have what we call the facility automation group, which keeps all of our access to our treatment plants and our critical infrastructure safe from hackers. We've completely eliminated the system that operates, we call a SCADA system. We keep that off of the regular networks and maintain those systems in-house. And I have to give all the credit for maintaining all of these assets to the amazing dedicated staff that provides that professional service to the community. Do an absolutely wonderful job. All right, now we're getting into it. Regulatory. Everything that is operated within utilities division has a regulatory responsibility with it. The water treatment plants have monthly operating reports. We file with Oregon Health Authority, Department of Environmental Quality, and at times with the Environmental Protection Agency. For operations and laboratory reporting requirements, which is a very complex program that we operate and we do reporting on, the regulatory agencies not only receive reports, but they also regulate and enforce licensing and training requirements for our operators. The treatment plant operators are required to obtain annual educational credits for their licenses. And for example, a water operator, to obtain the highest grade 4 license, they must have at least a degree in environmental science and 10 years of experience before they can even take a grade 4 test. Obtaining a license is very difficult. It requires a continuous education and a commitment for excellence. In addition to the operations, we're also regulated by the Oregon Water Resource Division for water rights and water use from the state. Other regulatory agencies that we work with are the Army Corps of Engineers. And they control the dams on the Willamette, and for the past 8 years, we've been in meetings and negotiations with them about the water reallocation that is being held behind the dams that control the water within the Willamette River. The wastewater plants. So the wastewater treatment plants file monthly operating reports to the Department of Environmental Quality and on occasion with the Environmental Protection Agency for operations and laboratory reporting. The EPA and DEQ, they issue complex operating permits that stay in force for a certain length of time, normally 5 years. The permit that we are operating under currently has been administratively extended by DEQ, and DEQ is expected to issue us a new permit for the wastewater plant. I expect that to happen in late 2021. Upon receiving that permit, we will evaluate it and determine if we are in agreement with the regulatory requirements that would be put on us for the plant. And then operating a wastewater treatment plant is also very complex and requires a very thorough knowledge of chemistry in addition to microbiology. The license requirements are similar to the water requirements for education and experience. Everything we do within a wastewater treatment plant occurs naturally in the environment. But what we do at the treatment plant is we speed that time up. Everything that comes into the plant, as it goes through each and every process, it has a very specific reason for what it does. It's either adding oxygen or it's taking it away. We're feeding all the microbiology, or we're creating an environment for them to feed on each other. So everything that we do within a treatment plant with the raw sewage, basically from front of the plant where it comes in to where it goes out, can be up to 30 days within the plant. Going over to the sewer collection system, the conveyance system is regulated through the Department of Environmental Quality for operations and maintenance. This includes conducting cleaning and TV inspections of the sewer mains. We do asset mapping, and the establishment of a pretreatment program that permits and tracks commercial and industrial sewer discharge and grease trap monitoring. License requirements for staff are focused more on the pipes and the environmental impacts and dangers associated with maintaining a collection system. So every time that a collection system worker is out in the field and they're using some very large equipment, they're either TVing inside of a pipeline, or they're washing a pipeline, or conducting some kind of maintenance. Within a collection system, there are a lot of dangers. There's buildup of hydrogen gas. There's also, you're not in control of what comes down the sewer pipeline. There's very explosive hazards that occur. And so the licensing requirements, the education, the personal protective equipment for staff is of the utmost importance for their safety and for the community safety. Within the water distribution system, it's regulated by EPA and the Safe Water Drinking Act. And throughout the health, and also by the health department. Staff conducts water testing throughout the city on a daily occurrence, and we closely monitor all areas of our water distribution system through a network of alarms and continuous monitoring. And just like the other work groups, the operators have similar licensing and educational requirements to work on the distribution system. So by state law, there cannot be anybody that can operate a valve or work on the water distribution system without a license. And the licenses are very rigorous to get. They're tough. They have about a 70% fail rate to them, and they take a lot of education and training to be able to obtain a grade 4 type license, which is the highest grade there is in the state. In the stormwater system, it is regulated by EPA through Department of Environmental Quality and the Water Resource Division also. The stormwater pipe system is operated similar to a sewer collection system for washing, TVing work, and mapping. In addition to the pipes, we maintain streams and creeks within the city's limits. We maintain a balance between the ecology and flood risk to our community members. And we're in the process now of receiving a new stormwater permit that will require additional staffing and organizational changes to be in compliance. And we expect that permit, which is also known as an MS4 permit, to be issued within the next probably 3-4 months from now. And we will have to be in compliance with that permit just after we receive it. And there are some timetables that are included within that permit. We absolutely love clean water system, the same way that we like to take care of our drinking water system and how we operate our wastewater treatment plants. So we want the best, and it's a very complicated process in taking care of stormwater, because you're very conscientious of our environment, but at the same time we have to minimize or mitigate any kind of flooding to our community members. Buses that drive through the area, people have to get to work, and of course flooding if there's a hazard for houses or access. So it's a very tough job that we have. All right, asset evaluation. So what do all of those assets add up to? You could see on the screen there that our asset valuation is over 1 point. Water and sewer systems are very, very expensive. They're not going down in value anytime soon. And the complexity of building onto a treatment plant or doing construction with new water lines or new sewer lines keeps going up in price. So the utilities division is basically the stewards of the city's single most costly portfolio of engineered assets. And like I said, it's increasing. The assets we depend on are the assets that protect human health, safety, and our environment. As mentioned earlier, we're highly regulated, and we've got the responsibility to make sure that we're maintaining all of these assets. So let's take a look What's next? So the asset management principles to efficiently manage life cycle costs of systems and to meet the level of service goals. So what is asset management? So it's a combination of business practice of providing the required level of service in the most cost-effective manner. So our information that we use to identify the projects and how we prioritize our work has to come out into a plan. And our plan that we start with is we look at our data analysis. We look at the data, we look at the information. How old is that piece of equipment? Is it prone for failure? What is the consequence of failure? What is the risk? And so we look at all of our data. We look at our asset information. We look at the cost. We look at the benefit analysis of it. And we prioritize which asset has to be done first, second, third, or fourth. And so we prioritize and we budget for what needs to be done. And part of that is the master planning. And when we do a master plan, which I'll talk about in a couple more slides, our master plans really identify some areas that could be deficient, or as the city is growing, maybe there's a specific area that needs to be increased in size to be able to get service out to that designated area. There's alternatives analysis of what we have. We could either do design work in-house with our own staff. The engineering department does an absolute fantastic job at that. Or depending on the type of project and the expertise that's needed with it, we will bid that out, or we'll contract out the design services for specific projects. And so the construction is the same way. We can do construction work in-house, depending on what it is, or we're going to bid the projects. In most cases, with any pipe work, with water, sewer, any major water, sewer treatment plant work, we contract that out. There are areas we do small sections of pipe in with our own in-house crews, and we do a lot of maintenance in-house, which we'll talk about that too in a minute here. So operating and maintaining, as part of that is our condition assessments of all of our assets. And we base that upon the reliability centered type maintenance. And this approach optimizes our maintenance strategies to optimize the productivity of the plants and pump stations using a cost-effective maintenance techniques such as condition-based maintenance. And we evaluate. And our dedicated team is always in a continuous improvement process to find ways of extending asset life without having equipment failures. So we constantly are in this circle, and we're always planning. We're always designing, maintaining, operating, and evaluating everything that we do. We do this because because it's what is required, and we're always continuously improving our work. So let's take a look at our strategic priorities. Strategic priorities. So I call this the ultimate Venn diagram. And every strategic priority can be related to the city's Imagine 2040 and the mission and vision statement. The thing that we do in utilities has an overlap and an effect on other work groups. So as mentioned in utilities, the utilities department has the largest asset valuation in the city. And with that comes a lot of responsibilities. When developing the Water Master Plan, we did a survey of the community, and we incorporated that information into our operating strategies. it was reported that the community's #1 concern was providing safe, high quality water, which was then closely followed by planning ahead now and for the future water needs, and being good stewards of our water and natural sources. Then being prepared for an earthquake or other natural disasters, and then promoting conservation, being prepared for global climate change, and providing multiple sources of reliable water supply. So those were 7 top priorities that came out of the survey that we did within our community. And as you can see from the strategic priorities that we have, it incorporates the all of those in that area of concern. Let's have a look at our asset planning projects. All right. All right, our asset planning is a very big project that we have. I think the best way and the shortest answer on this is asset planning basically can start with the master planning that we have. We've recently been working on our water master plan, and it'll be completed in 2021. And the plan evaluates the adequacy of the existing water distribution system. It also looks at the treatment plants and evaluates where we are with the treatment plants in the current conditions. And also we look at future requirements. So with the Safe Water Drinking Act, there are several upcoming targets that we must meet to meet the Safe Water Drinking Act. And looking at the Water Master Plan, it'll be incorporating all that, and also incorporates with the assets, like I had mentioned, with all the pipes and pump stations and that within the system, and it'll incorporate and put a planning tool with that. The wastewater master plan which will start in July of this year, and will include the wastewater treatment plant and sewer collection systems and sewer pump stations. So that master plan, not only with the treatment plant that we have, it'll incorporate with our new discharge monitoring report that we will get from Department of Environmental Quality at the end of this year is where I'm thinking it's going to come in. But it'll also include within the collection system any improvements, recommendations. It'll also look at the area that I talked about earlier, where we will then have, where it takes part of that stormwater system and it combines it with the sewer and gets it to the treatment plant. So we will evaluate not only all those areas, but it also will incorporate the climate action issues. It'll also incorporate disaster resiliency items at the same time. These are very big projects, and they'll usually last about 3 years to complete. It's a lot of work. Then we've got, after that, we will then do the stormwater master plan, and it's planned to start in that fiscal year of 24-25, which is July 1st of 2024. And it'll include all of the storm system and conveyance system. It'll also include the streams and creek system that we have to evaluate erosion, habitat, and improvements that might need to be done there. And we'll also be looking at incorporating any new design standards with new housing developments, detention ponds, or potentially retention ponds, and looking at areas that need to have additional drainage, storm drain, or detention areas in that. So these are, once again, very big projects that take about 3 years to complete. Each one of these master plans are very expensive. Having a master plan on file and completing these have got several benefits. It allows us to participate in the state and federal revolving loan program so that we can get very low interest loans, bonds to rebuild our system, to reinvest in our system. Because as I mentioned earlier, our systems are huge. They're very big, a lot of pipes, a lot of equipment, a lot of assets. And they deteriorate every day. They depreciate, and every day they just get a little bit older, and at times they have an early failure rate to them for whatever reason that might be. And having these master plans and identifying all that helps us qualify for the low interest loans if we decide to do something like that in the future. So they provide, the master plans provide for that orderly provision of required infrastructure improvements to serve the future needs and development. And the development improvements are there to correct any existing deficiencies that are found. And we establish the primary cost, preliminary cost estimates as a basis for updating the capital infrastructure fee programs. So the CIP programs that we have in place. So let's take a deeper dive into master planning. So that general approach for master planning, so we evaluate, like I was saying earlier, existing system. We determine if the improvements are needed or correct any kind of deficiencies. It also evaluates the future needs and development, optimizes that existing facilities to extend urban services, and determine infrastructure improvements to serve future needs and development, and determine economical solutions. So one good example of a master plan is how a city expands. A lot of times as expansions occur, the requirement of having additional fire hydrants or fire flows also is part of that. And so evaluation of the city's fire system, how much storage do we have, how big are the pipes, can the pipes flow the amount of water that is required for what we call as the ISO, the insurance for fire insurance requirements and housing insurance and industrial commercial buildings on their insurance. So we're very conscientious within the water industry of making sure that we work very close with the fire department, because it's everything that we do, like I was saying earlier, is connected to other work groups. So by providing additional fire flows, by providing additional fire hydrants, not only is it costly, but the community also has a benefit to it also for lower insurance ratings and some cost savings with that. The master planning, I was saying earlier with the disaster response, is that it does include what Oregon has is the 2013 Oregon Resiliency Plan. And that Oregon Resiliency Plan sets out goals for recovery in the initial days of a disaster and weeks also of following an earthquake, and to support the rapid economic and social recovery of the systems. All right. So now we're looking at the, for our major tactical goals and objectives that are within the system that we're looking at for doing the master planning. Again, whenever we're looking at either either the master plans, or we're looking at our asset reevaluation or reinvestment within the system, we always look at what our level of service and our customer groups are. And looking at that, the asset management plans and strategy implementation, as we covered earlier, is very important to determining that information. We manage our risks and our asset failure. We have pipes. Every time we fix a pipe, we have a work order. We know how many times a pipe has been worked on. We know what its condition is. We know its age, and we know if it's fully depreciated out, whether it's an old pipe that's 60, 70 years old and we've never had a problem with it, versus a pipe that maybe is 30 years old and it has a lot of issues or problems. So we really look at what the strategy is. We look at our asset management, and we develop how we're gonna look at what that asset failure and manage what those risks are. The business case evaluations is just that. It's we have an asset, we have it priority level. We know what it's going to cost to replace it, and so we put a business case to it as a strategy of getting it replaced. Do we do it in-house? We bid it out of assets that might require to get a loan or a bond or something to make sure that we're taking care of it. We implement our reliability, I was saying earlier, in our reliability-centered maintenance. And so the maintenance activities that we use are quite a bit different than we even used 5 years ago, where we are using vibration analysis on pumps and motors, where we're taking oil samples and determining that if we used a higher grade of oil, instead of changing an oil in a piece of equipment every 6 months, with higher grade oil, maybe we only have to do it once a year, but the cost is less in the long run, and the equipment is longer lived. And so when we're looking at our reliability centered maintenance, it's a very highly technical process that we use, and our staff has really embraced that. We look at the water loss and outages that we have, and so in doing that, we evaluate, and it goes into our, I was saying earlier, with our work orders, we evaluate our system. Our water loss within a city is under 10%. We're sitting at about 6%, and it's a hard to measure water loss. We have water produced at the plant, and then we have water that goes through meters. But there's a lot of water that's in between for construction or for flushing for hydrants or fires. And so we have to calculate all that out, and we look at what those are in those processes. So there's a lot of data, a lot of information, and those are also reports that we have to file with the state. We forecast our infrastructure replacement needs. So our capitalization policy, our technology, our systems, our business workflows, and benchmarking. Benchmarking is extremely important. Everybody likes to know if they're doing what is required. Is there an expectation that's more, or are we meeting all of our requirements that we have? And a good example of benchmarking is when the sewer collections staff are out washing sewer lines daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so we have that as a benchmark. And so we established a benchmark in most all of our work. And we know whether we're falling behind or we're keeping up with what needs to be done. And we use this information for budgeting purposes. We use it to also, if we need additional equipment, we use the benchmarking for those justifications for working on the assets, or what do we need to do for that. And developing our asset management competency is part of that benchmarking process, but it's always finding better ways of doing the work and managing what their assets are, what they're capable of. An electric motor that's running for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is that practical or not for that motor to do it, or should you have a redundant motor to take over in other times? And just really measuring and looking at what those assets are and what's the best way to operate them. And alignment with those international standards, and the alignment with those standards goes hand in hand with the benchmarking and with the reliability maintenance that I had talked about earlier. And everything there is very well planned out, and it works well. So the business matrices, we're continuously ongoing measurements to ensure continuous improvement and business performances within the utilities division. And our planning, our system-wide infrastructure planning is part of this whole process, and our capital plan for our business case evaluations and to justify and prioritize our projects. And budget, we assign our resources based on our asset condition and criticality, and we operate the system within our budgeted means. But everything, as you've seen, the $1.2 billion in assets, it's a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of work that to keep up with all that. And so it's not like you could just take your car and drive it forever and it breaks down. We don't have that option. We can't have a water treatment plant fail. That would be bad. We can't have a sewer plant fail. So we have to reinvest into our assets. We have to reinvest into these pipes and our motors and pumps. And it's very important. Not only is it a responsibility, but it's a regulatory requirement. And that is part of the reason why we have such strict regulatory requirements that are put within the utilities division. Not only is it internally, it's external with all the regulatory agencies that are involved. This is everybody's health and safety. Having good, clean water is very important. And our community trusts us. We have a staff that is very professional. They are so dedicated to the community that they actually worry at times that if during this COVID, if one person gets sick, how does that affect the other staff? And so they've volunteered that they will sleep on site to make sure that the community keeps functioning. And we've come up with these plans. And the same thing for the wastewater treatment plant and my technical services division and the sewer collection operators and distribution operators. Water lines, sewer lines do not care if COVID is out there, but when those lines break, somebody's got to fix them. And so those frontline essential staff are just vital. They're vital to everybody. And we know in water and sewer, we're not at the top of everybody's conversation. We're usually out of sight and out of mind until the water line doesn't function properly and you don't get water, or you can't flush your commode. That's usually a bad day, and then we get the phone calls. But there are so many times that all the emergencies that we've averted, the things that we've taken care of in-house with the staff, they're so dedicated to community. I'm so proud of every one of them. and they do such a wonderful job. And that's reflective also from, city council all the way down to throughout the ranks to give us the support and the trust that's needed for us to do our jobs and to function. And taking care of these expensive assets requires reinvestment, and at times, rate increases have to occur to take care of this. $1.2 billion is a lot of money, and we take pride in making sure that everybody gets good, safe drinking water and can flush their commodes. So with that, I think, yes. Are there any questions? Okay.
Here we go, Tom.
So I have a question here from Ms. Murphy. A few years ago, we were worried about, pardon?
Oh, sorry, Tom. Yeah, this is Laura. I'm going through some of the questions. That first question, worrying about the temperature of the wastewater being returned to the Willamette, also ties in with one later on that, sorry, let me find it, about the TMDL, which some people might be aware of them, some might not. So people are curious about the wastewater permitting and being required to meet certain temperatures when you send water back into the Willamette, and will you be able to reach that TMDL requirement?
Yes, the TMDL temperature requirement has not been completed from the EPA and DEQ at this point. We are really expecting before the end of this year, though, that we will know exactly what the requirements are. That we have plans we had looked at in the past. We looked at how to avert any of those temperature requirements and put together quite a plan. One of the plans that I have that our future is to have a zero discharge from the wastewater treatment plant in the summertime. And so that'll be part of the wastewater master plan project as we go through to really evaluate those in more depth and with up-to-date information and technology.
Okay, here's another question. How much new development can the current system accommodate without expansion? And I'm sure that applies to both water and sewage.
We are in a process right now with the water master plan and evaluating that part of the system. We do have plans where we have identified, where at what level the plant needs to expand, and it depends on where the expansion occurs, but we have room in the plant now in the current system, and we have adequate storage, and we're able to meet the needs of the city from what I remember from the plan, and it's still being compiled and finished for the next 5 years anyway, if not longer. if not 10. But there are other improvements that, as the Safe Water Drinking Act requires maybe some different treatment possibilities or capabilities, we'll have to add on to the plant to meet those needs.
So I think these two questions are related. Where does the treated wastewater go? And there's another one down here. Sorry. Well, let's try that one. Where does treated wastewater go? And does the city have any plans for gray water use within the city?
Great question. The discharge from the wastewater treatment plant after everything it goes out into a pipe network that is out into the Willamette River. The gray water, where we do a water reclaim, all of the water that's used on the plant grounds at the wastewater treatment plant for watering the grass, we also use that water, the gray water, or recycled water is what we call it. Instead of putting it out into the Willamette, we'll use that water within our operations at the treatment plant and for irrigation purposes and that around the plant during the summer times. I'm looking at in the future expanding that process, and like I was saying a minute ago, we're going to expand that and include that into the wastewater master plan.
So here's a great question. Brown water comes out of my faucets. What's my problem?
Well, that can be several different things. It could be a lack of water usage. It could be that some of the pipes within some of the houses still have an old galvanized system, galvanized pipe systems. And that's mostly the cause of that, or it's either the piping system is a little old, or that the usage does not allow for that water to turn over within the pipe network within a house, and it'll go to a discoloring.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious also how many staff members you have, and that ties in with another question where you've talked about the science around your work, and how hard is it to find highly qualified, skilled staff when you have a job opening?
Oh, that's a great question. So under normal operations, my staff is about 54 in size, and it is it is very difficult to hire qualified staff for these jobs. I've been seeing it for years. Is that what I call as a brain drain, and a lot of the workers are retiring, and finding people that come in and replace them is very, very difficult. The educational requirements, the licensing requirements, and just the work in general is very hard. It's a lot of labor, and I have wrestled around quite a bit with getting positions filled, and not wanting to settle. And the entire staff, when I sit down and talk to them about replacements, is that it's no one wants to settle, even if it creates a little extra work for everybody. We want to get the right people to fit in with what needs to be done in the mission to get it accomplished.
So one question that someone sent in is that during the summer, it's their understanding that Corvallis gets 2/3 of its water from the Willamette. And they're concerned, are we drinking Eugene's treated sewer water? And is that water cleaned of drugs and hormones?
Well, there's a lot of water that comes down the Willamette, and somewhere everybody is drinking recycled water. Just, you know, there's no new water that's made in the world. It's all recycled through evapotranspiration. And the water that comes down the Willamette is a lot of water comes from the farmlands, you know, storm drains and that go in and enter. And it also is water that is held behind the dams that the Corps of Engineers operate. And so when we do testing on our water, and the health department comes in and they do testing, and our treatment processes that we use within the treatment plant, we'll say since we're talking about the Willamette at Taylor, our processes that we use, we have a filtration system that is a little bit unique, not uncommon, but it's unique for our area. And we use granular activated carbon. And so this GAC filters out and absorbs items or things that could come out, such as we hear a lot about HABs, the harmful algae bacteria, or algae blooms, and those bacteria get absorbed within those within that GAC filter system. So we do run a different filtration system at the Taylor plant that is very robust, and we are changing filter media out on an annual basis in any one of our different filters that we have. So I hope I answered that question. There's Willamette's got a very high flow to it. And so
even during the summer, that it should be,
you know, a lot of sediment, and that gets all removed.
So even during the summer, when we have a lower flow, it's still adequate enough to clean the water?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's a COVID question. Is the COVID...
The Taylor Water Treatment Plant operates 7 days a week. I think there's just a delay in our talking a little bit. And I think with the Taylor Water Treatment Plant, it operates 7 days a week. And it also, during the summertime, we will operate the plant up to 20 hours a day. The Rock Creek Water Treatment Plant runs 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And that plant is just has a continuous flow, where the Taylor treatment plant, we shut it off each day. We turn it off, and the operators will go home. And so during the winter time, that they could be there 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. During the summertime, they could be there. It's usually about 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So here's there are a couple of questions about how the city charges for water. We all, of course, want to have clean water and a good sewer system. But some people are asking about the fees that are being added on now to water and wastewater bills. And So there's some questions about, why the city is using that, and it appears to be a vehicle for adding tax revenue without having to go through a public process.
I don't feel like I'm probably the expert to talk about those other fees that are on that bill, but I can say that by having it on one bill, it's much more efficient for mailing and less costly. So there is some savings with that, but I'm not the expert on those other charges that the person is wanting to get an answer on.
Here's a good one. What will the Corvallis water system look like after a major earthquake, and how long would it likely take to restore operation to core parts of the city?
That is an excellent question. And we've been working on training and working on identifying areas that could use improvements, areas that we've identified within the city's corporate limits, looking at all of the different areas that we would have for rescue, for housing folks, and that. What would it look like? It is really hard to say. There could be parts of our system that it depends on the magnitude of the earthquake. It depends on the lateral shifting of the soils, and up and down versus a back and forth shaking. They are very different and can have a different impact on the pipes and the network of the system. I can say that the training that we've been doing within the city on emergency services and what we're planning for, we just had given an announcement that we've received a grant, a $250,000 grant. It's a trailer, emergency response trailer for water, emergency water service, filtration system for disasters. We also have some water, some other small water filtration units. We've been doing a lot of planning with building a water conveyance system that's portable to different areas of the city or neighborhoods. And so we've been doing a lot of planning, a lot of mapping, but we're never going to be done. And it's a very, very costly process to put in place. Next year's budget, I've got a planning and budgeting for a lot of seismic improvements throughout the water and sewer system on all of our structures, with as much in-house budget as I can and can afford. And the new construction standards that we're putting in place for resiliency added to piping is also going in place. So it's an excellent question. I've been through 2 presidential disaster declarations back east in my career, and you never know how you're gonna be affected. The number one thing is your staff, and we have to get people that are going to respond. Now, part of that process and looking at staff, we've gone through the fire department. A person, Dave Busby, has done a lot of training to community members in what we call a CERT program, where community members have volunteered to take on certain types of
I appear to have lost the audio for Tom.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, the system shut down for just a second. Okay.
And I've lost my screen, so apologies to our participants.
Laura, if you want me to read the questions, I can.
There you go. I can hear you. Yeah, I go right ahead, Jessica.
Well, we might kind of just be getting towards the end here, but okay, so I think Laura has now dropped off. I think that we are probably, there might be some regional technical issues going on here, I guess, at different places, but let's see if Laura, are you able to access the Q&A? We might be at towards the end of our time anyway, but we might have time for another question or two.
I'm back, but I don't see, oh, it says no open questions. Interesting. We see, and I hear Tom's voice, but I don't see him. The questions, I cannot access them anymore.
Laura, let me, and tell me if one of these questions has been asked, but somebody asked about earthquake, seismic.
Yes, and I just wanted to follow up with Tom on that. Are there things that neighborhoods and neighborhood associations could do through, for instance, the neighborhood grant program to help with water issues like during an earthquake or disaster, if it relates, as it relates to water and wastewater?
Yes, thank you. That is a fantastic question. It is so important that community members plan for a disaster, that they have a storage of food and water, because you do not know how long a response effort's going to take. It could be a day, it could be a week, depending on the magnitude of the earthquake or other disaster. It is so important. You cannot rely upon somebody to come and save you. You have to you do have to have a supply. You do have to figure, that you're going to have some food and drink. It's just best to plan it that way. And there are some areas, some links to go to on the state of Oregon has. The state of Oregon's got an absolutely fantastic website that covers a lot of that information of what you should have and some possible funding mechanisms. But it's really important. It'll save us a lot of extra work in doing that, because if we get a sizable earthquake, there's guaranteed we're going to have water lines that are going to be broke, and we're going to be having to fix these water lines. We're going to have our staff in. We're going to have to maybe clear debris out of the way before we can get to it. And if it's at night, we got to have lighting set up. We have to have some other pumps and tools and equipment. And that's why it's really important, what I was saying earlier about valves, that we maintain the 7,000 valves that we have within our system. And those valves are critical, where we can redirect the water into a different area with those valves by turning them on or turning them off.
There are a couple of questions about the new master plan. One is, does the master plan take into account the desirability of reestablishing the complexity of the river's floodplain? And then providing sewer and water to the UGB north of Corvallis has been challenging. And will that be part of the new master planning, some of this new development in the UGB north of Corvallis?
We've looked at and we're fine tuning that part of the master plan as we speak, with the mapping and what should be included and how far out. So, you know, we look at a 20-year master plan and what we think that the master plan needs to cover for a time period. And so some of that is all still being finalized and put together in a final document. So the UGB, there are some areas that we may stop at the city limits, but we do know that, you know, there is a potential maybe in a different UGB area, but there's also environmental hazards or you know, slope hazards or wetlands or something in some areas we just cannot serve. And as far as, I think the other question was about the floodplain on the Willamette.
Correct.
Yeah, part of the master plan is we looked at the disaster having to do with earthquake and flooding. And so we looked at a 500-year flood area, and the water treatment plants are in good shape there. We've got some things that we will have to do, but you know, for that, but it will include some of the flood planning.
So Tom, could you talk a little about water conservation? So do you have suggestions on how we can use less water, low flush toilets, not watering the lawn, washing cars? But what are the things that the community can do to help, maintain a good water system?
Right. So the community in Corvallis has done a absolutely fantastic job in curtailing water usage. We've seen with the community growing, and we've seen water retraction with the community growing at the same time, and it changes from season to season a bit, but the community members in Corvallis have just done a fantastic job of that. With the new standards and plumbing standards with low flow toilets, and people becoming more and more conscientious of maybe yard sprinklers where they're not doing it, or they're just using in drip systems. Those are really good ways of conserving. And of course, there's the normal things that we should be doing, of turn the faucet off while you're brushing your teeth, or, you know, don't take a full glass of water when you're only going to drink half of it. There's some things that we just got to change some of our habits in and hold each other accountable on it. But there's some just very habit changing things that we can do as community members to help with that process. But it's just continuously improving and trying to be conscientious of what we're doing.
I think we got to the majority of the questions. I don't see any more in the chat box, but unfortunately I lost some of them. But I think we're getting close to the end of our time anyway. And so I wanted to express to you the community's appreciation for all that you and your staff do to maintain our healthy water system and our efficient sewer system. And we really appreciate the complexity, I think, that we've all learned tonight about what your department does and how many different areas it covers. And is there anything else you'd like to say at the end, Tom? We certainly appreciate your time.
I really appreciate being asked to talk about such an important project. You know, this is so important. I've got such a passion for my work and what I do, and we have such a great workforce. And so I guess what I like to say is whenever you run across somebody in a water and sewer utilities division, thank them for their hard work. They're out there, they get called at Christmas morning when they should be with their family, you know, birthdays and holidays, and they're really dedicated, and they love their jobs. They love the community, and I guess, you know, like to end with that. And just want to thank the organization for what you do, and getting out to communities and that. I really appreciate it, and I would love to come back at any time if you would have me back and expand on anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're going to continue this Know Your City series. This is our third year, and I think we've touched on a lot of different issues. This year we even talked about some of the county issues. So for all the participants, we thank you for coming. And if you have suggestions for next year's Know Your City, please send your comments to the League of Women Voters of Corvallis. Go on our website and send us a little note. Thank you again for Tom Hubbard for talking for so long. And thank you to all the participants for coming tonight. And with that, I think we'll say good evening.